Hello! In this video we're going to dive right into Onshape by creating a simple part. Now I'm going to assume you've already created and logged into your Onshape account so you can get to this screen. The first thing we're going to do is click the big giant create button right up here. And we're going to say we want to create a document. Now you need to give your document a name. I'm going to call this one cover. And you'll see why in a second. Now, the first thing you need to do in a parametric modeling program, that's what we call Onshape and a lot of different CAD programs like it. The first thing you'll usually need to do is draw a two-dimensional shape that you can make your three-dimensional objects out of. And Onshape calls that a sketch. So I'm going to click the sketch button up here. And right away it asks me to select a sketch plane. Now what that's talking about is right now these three rectangles in the middle of the screen. I can either draw my two-dimensional shape on the top plane, so like on a sheet of paper on the top of the table in front of me, on the front plane, so if I were to hold a sheet of paper right directly in front of me, or on the right plane, which would be if I held a sheet of paper with the edge towards me. I want to draw on the top plane, so I'm going to click on that one. And you can either click on it over here, or it's probably best to use these listings over here. Click on the top plane there. Now I'm all ready to start drawing my sketch, and you see it makes a box here that says sketch 1 to show that I'm drawing the sketch on that plane. And at this point it's going to be easier to draw if I can look straight down at the top plane, like I were looking straight down at the sheet of paper. And at this point I should talk about what kind of mouse you'll want to have. Now you can use Onshape even if you only have the trackpad that's built into a laptop like a Chromebook, but it's really best if you can get a 3-button mouse, a real mouse or trackball or something like that, that has at least 2 buttons and a wheel in the middle. And that's really important because you can use the wheel to zoom in and out, like this, like you see me doing right now. I'm turning my mouse wheel. You can click down on the wheel button to move the screen around like this. I'm pushing down on my mouse wheel. Or you can click and hold the right mouse button to spin the whole thing around like this. Now, some of these things you either won't be able to do if you only have a touchpad, or they'll be hard and annoying and you won't want to try and do them. And if you do have trouble and you can't use, you don't have a real mouse that you can use the view cube over here. This is pretty nice because you can either click on one of these faces of the cube here to spin around and look at it from that side. Or you can use these arrows here to spin it around in steps like this, and you can even rotate it with these. So, but I'm going to, and you can also click on this smaller cube in here and switch it to things like isometric, which is where it started out, or dimetric and trimetric are really similar to it. Or you can say zoom to fit or zoom to window if you ever lose your design because you zoomed off way over here like this and you can't see it anymore. You can say zoom to fit and it'll come back. But anyhow, right now I just want to click on the top face of the cube here, so I'm looking straight down at the top plane and I can draw my shape. The shape I want to draw is a basic boring rectangle right now. So I'm going to go over to this tool here which says corner rectangle. I'm going to click on the down arrow right next to it and pick the center point rectangle because I don't want to say where the 2 corners are. I want to say where the center and then the one corner is. The reason I'm going to do that is I want the center of the rectangle to be exactly at the origin, at the center point of the whole model. That's where this black dot is here, but it turns orange as soon as I move my mouse over it. That's Onshape showing me that when I click, it's going to start drawing my thing right there on that point. So I'm going to click on the dot in the middle. Now I just clicked once, and it's letting me choose the size of my rectangle here. Now, it doesn't really matter what shape and size I make this right now because I'm going to decide on the exact dimensions in a little bit. So I'll just make it yay big and click again, and there's my rectangle. Now, right now, Onshape still thinks I'm drawing rectangles. So if I click again, oh no, now I'm drawing a new rectangle and I didn't want to do that. There's two ways you can get out of drawing rectangles. You can either push the escape key on your keyboard, or at any time you can right-click. And you'll see this menu here, and you can say select Escape Center Rectangle, or Escape whatever else it is you're doing. I'm going to click on that, so I'm done drawing rectangles. Now I want to decide how big my rectangle is going to be. And I want this to be about a little bit bigger than the top of my tissue box that I have right here. And my tissue box is a little under 9 inches long and 4 3/4 inches wide. So I want to make mine a little bit bigger, so I'm going to make it 9.5 by 5 inches. And the way I can do that, the way I can tell these lines that make up the rectangle how long to be, is I can click on the dimension tool right up here. Now I get my pointer turned into a plus sign again like it did when I drew the rectangle to show that I have a tool active. I'm going to click on the top line of the rectangle just once. And now it's going to let me put this label wherever I want it. So I'll click again when I have the label where I want to put it. And I get to type in how big I want my rectangle, how long I want that line to be. And you notice it shows me the unit here. It says IN. If you type in a number without a unit, if you just say 9.5, it's going to be inches, IN. That's just the default that Onshape uses because it knows when I created my account that I said I was in the United States, and it assumes I want to use inches. But you should never rely on that. You should always be a good physics student and keep your unit with your measurement. Because someone could go into your settings, or into the documents settings if you're collaborating with your classmates, and change that to centimeters or millimeters or something. Or you could be making measurements in centimeters and millimeters, and you could, forget that it's going to be in inches by default. And you can get your units mixed up. And it's really bad if you get your units mixed up. NASA did that once with this thing. This was called the Mars Climate Orbiter. This was a space probe they launched in the late 1990s, I believe. Its job was to fly through space to Mars and orbit around Mars and record all sorts of science data about the atmosphere and stuff. But it never did what it was supposed to do. They never got to use it. And the reason was that one of the contractors NASA was working with, who they were writing some software, thought that the units that the software calculated should be in English units like we use in the United States, inches and pounds and so forth. But NASA thought it was going to be metric units like they use in Europe or like scientists use. So when NASA plugged the numbers from this software from the English contractor, not an English contractor, but the one using English units, into their software that used metric units, instead of going through Mars's upper atmosphere to just slow down, the probe accidentally went way too steep, went deep into Mars's lower atmosphere and burned up. They ruined this multi-million-dollar space probe just because of one little unit mix-up. So, unless you want your part to burn up in the Martian atmosphere, you should always keep your unit with your measurement. So I'm always, whenever you see me type in a unit, I'm going to say IN for inches or cm for centimeters or something. And the reason it's useful to do this is, let's say instead of 5 inches, I said 5 inches for how wide this is. Let's say I measured that in centimeters. See, I look at my tissue box and it's not quite 12 centimeters long, or wide rather. So let's say I want to make it 12.5 centimeters wide. Even though this is in inches, if I say 12.5 cm, and then I push enter, Onshape will automatically convert it to inches for me. You see, instead of 12.5, I got 4.921. That's how many inches that is. So as long as you keep your unit with your number, it's always going to be safe. You might get funny looking numbers because they're not nice and round anymore, but it will convert for you. So now that I have my units entered in, I'm done drawing this. Now this little box here where I picked that shows me which plane I picked and stuff will also let me give this shape, this sketch, a name. See, if I click on the pencil here, it'll let me type in a name for this. It's a good habit to give a name to each thing you do, each sketch and 3D feature that you make in Onshape so that you remember what each one is for. I'm going to call this one the box base because I'm going to make a box out of it. And then I'm all done with this now, so I'm going to click the green check mark. And now I just clicked on this corner of the view cube here. Now I have my nice rectangle all drawn out, and I'm ready to turn it into a 3D feature. And there's several different ways that you can turn this two-dimensional shape into a three-dimensional feature, but the one I'm going to use is called an extrusion. I'm going to extrude it. So I'm going to click on the extrude tool right here. Now this brought up a box, and you see it colored this text here red. That means it's not ready. It says I need to select a face or sketch region to extrude. So I can't extrude anything if it doesn't have anything to extrude. I can click inside this box here. It says to select my face or sketch region. And then I'll click on box base over here to select it. There. Now it knows I want to extrude that shape that I drew, and it's showing me a preview of what my three-dimensional shape will be. Now I need to type in my measurement for how far I want to extrude it right here. And I'll measure my tissue box over here. It's about 3.5 inches deep, and I'll make mine a little bit bigger again. So I'll say it's 4 inches. I pushed enter, and now it's showing me what that'll look like. And I'm all done with that now, so I'll give it a name and click the green check mark. Now I have my first three-dimensional shape, but it's not very useful right now because it's just a big solid brick of stuff, and if I tried to 3D print it, it would be really expensive and not very useful. It cost hundreds of dollars in 3D printer material, so that's not good. And what we want to do anyway is hollow it out, because what I'm actually building here, the reason I measured my Kleenex box, my tissue box, is that I want to make a tissue box cover, you know, to put over top of your tissue box so it looks nice and pretty. So I'm going to spin around to look at the bottom here, because I want to hollow it out from the bottom so I can turn it into an open box so I can put it over my tissue box. And there's several ways I could do that, but I'm going to use the shell feature, the shell tool. And that's right up here, but there's one important thing about this. This is the first tool that you might not see right away. So I can show you if I make my window smaller. If you have a small screen or a small browser window, oops, I'm moving it. some of these tools will go away into little menus like the corner rectangle was in before. You see the shell went away. It's actually in here now, way off in this menu. And if you can't find something because it went away like that, or you can't keep track of where they're going, you can always use this search box here. If I click inside here and type in shell, it'll show it right here, and it'll even highlight where it is on the toolbar if it is there. So I'm going to click on the shell, and now it wants to know, you see it shows the red text here again, I'm not ready yet. It wants to know which faces to remove. Which side of the box do I want open? And I want the bottom to be open, so I'm going to click on the bottom of my box, and you'll see if I spin this around a little bit, that it is showing me what it's going to do. It's going to make my box hollow just like I want. And it wants to know the shell thickness, how thick the walls are going to be. And that's defaulted to 1/10 of an inch, and that's actually exactly what I want. So I'm going to give it a name here. The hollowed box, and click the green check mark. And now it's all hollowed out, and it's a nice cover that I can put over top of my box, except for one problem. There's no hole in the top. How am I going to get the Kleenex out? I can't get the tissues out without a hole in the top. So I need to look at it from the top again here, because we need to cut a hole in the top of our model. And we need to draw out the two-dimensional shape that our hole is going to be in first. So we need another sketch right here. And it's asking for a sketch plane again. And I don't just have to use the top plane or the front plane or the right plane again. I can also use a face of a three-dimensional object I've made already as the plane. So I'm going to click on the top, and I'm going to be drawing on the top of this box instead of just on the top plane. And you could make the hole any shape you wanted, I suppose, but I want mine to be an ellipse. And the ellipse is hiding behind this circle tool here. If I click the down arrow by it, here's ellipse right here. And you could type this into the search box too, of course. So I'm going to click on that. And I want this to be in the exact middle. That's why I put my rectangle on this exact middle point here, so I can use that for my hole too. Make sure that turns orange and then click on it. And now it's going to show me which way my ellipse is going to point and how wide it's going to be. So I want it to be exactly left to right here, and you see an orange dotted line shows up to show me that it's exactly at a 0-degree angle here, exactly centered. I'll click, and now I'm deciding how thick I want my ellipse to be. And here again too, I'm just going to make it yay big because I can use the dimension tool. Remember this one right here. You can click on that, and then just click on my ellipse to decide how long or how wide I want it to be. I'm just going to make up some numbers here. Let's say 6 inches long. That looks pretty good. And I can dimension it twice because it's an ellipse. I can do the thickness too. When I clicked the dimension tool again, I escaped out of it. I think 1 3/4 inches will look pretty good. There. Now that's my ellipse. I'm going to give the shape a name here. And click the green check mark to tell it I'm done. Now we're almost finished. We just have to cut this hole out somehow. And we're going to do that with an extrusion too, just like for the box. Only this time, I'm going to select my whole base, just like before. But this time, instead of creating a new part or adding extra material to this one, I want to remove material. Instead of adding new stuff where my shape is, I want to get rid of stuff. So I'm going to click remove. And you see, it's showing me that I'm cutting a hole through it here. And it's also asking me how far to extrude, how far to cut stuff. And this only needs to be 1/10 of an inch because that's how thick the walls of my box are. But it's not going to hurt anything if I let it go the whole inch and cut out some extra empty space too. So I'll say 1 inch to name this hole because it's the hole in the top. Then click the green check mark and I'm all finished. There's my Kleenex box cover. It's all set. I could 3D print this right now. Now you might wonder, at what point, how do you save your file? How do you save your work? And the cool thing about Onshape is that it's like Google Docs or something like that. It's always saving your work. Every little thing you do, you're never going to lose work because it crashed or your internet connection went away or someone hit your computer with a hammer or something. You're never going to lose your work. But you still might want to save your progress at different points so you know what you've changed over time, and you can go back and look at old versions and see how your part has evolved over time. And the way you do that is this button up here with the one black circle on it that says Create Version. I'm going to click on that. And you can give your version a name. And a description. And these should be just like the names for all of the sketches and extrusions and stuff that you made. These names over here. These should be, good explanations for you so that you remember what you did and why these versions exist. Because these are going to help you when you're reading through this and you're trying to figure out what you did. These are okay for now, so I'm going to click Create. And then you can see all the versions you've created like that if you click on this icon here. I don't have very many versions. I just have this start one that it made automatically when I first created the file. That doesn't have anything in it. And then this first tissue box cover that I just did. And this one up here with the empty looking circle is special. That's just whatever it is at right now. Even if you haven't saved any changes yet, it says workspace here. That's what it's doing right now. But I haven't actually saved any of these changes yet. There aren't any changes since this version, but if there were, they would show up here. But once you've done that, created your first version, you have your first part all finished. Congratulations.